Hello, YouTube world. This is going to be a follow-up, part 2 to my last video on Black Lives Matter. A quick note, I just logged into my YouTube account before coming on, and it looks like YouTube is doing something to cook and fudge the numbers. As I noticed, my video from yesterday on Black Lives Matter, I first logged in and it had 186 views. Then I went into a different window to look at a different article, and I came back probably 30 seconds to 1 minute, and it had 135 views. So it had 51 fewer views in about a minute of time. So it appears YouTube may literally be screwing with the numbers on people's channels that they want to promote, increasing the numbers, channels like mine that they don't want people seeing, decreasing the numbers to make it look worse, to try to discourage viewers from watching this channel and others like it. And I'm seeing this with other channels on YouTube that I subscribe to and like and view. So it's very clear YouTube is censoring and doing a lot of different things to try to control viewership. So, anyhow, I really don't care about the numbers. I just want people to get the information, and I know that God will guide whoever needs to whatever video mine they need to see. So I'm just going to keep going as long as we have some form of free speech. So last video I left off with a CNN interview with Don Lemon and Terry Crews. And one of our subscribers made a good point saying, Terry Crews has definitely controlled opposition, that he was in the Brotherhood and had taken the oath. And, I tend to agree with you on that. I don't know for sure, but, Terry Crews has made millions and millions of dollars in Hollywood. And it's very hard to believe that anyone can be on that level and make that kind of money without selling out and taking the blood oath. And in his roles, a lot of times he's objectified, always having to take his clothes off, kind of in the man bait role. So I think that's likely you're right, that he is controlled opposition. So anyhow, moving forward, I want to dig more into Black Lives Matter, and I just want to start off by playing this video. This interview is from Fox News.
Why does BLM only seem satisfied these days with a complete subjugation of others, especially others who haven't been part of their movement?
Because they take their instructions, their guidance from the Marxist playbook. Look, I'm going to tell some hard truths that people are not going to want to hear, and I want to separate the protesters out there that support BLM and some of the misguided athletes and celebrities that, are pushing the Black Lives Matter narrative. Many of them are innocent, misguided, but innocent. The BLM movement, Black Lives Matter movement, was founded by Elisa Garza and a number of other co-founders that were promoting a hard Marxist and LGBT agenda, a gay agenda, LGBT, I believe is the right terminology, agenda. And look, I don't have a problem with people exercising their First Amendment rights. You have the right to organize, you have the right to protest, you have the right to come up with an agenda. But I'll be goddamn if you use the...
Want to apologize there. He got upset and took the Lord's name in vain. I apologize for that. And so this man, Niger Ennis, a civil rights leader, he's mentioning this big LGBT gay component of Black Lives Matter, and this is the only man that I've seen on mainstream media, on mainstream television, mention the LGBT aspect of BLM.
Suffer and misery of Black Americans and our legacy to the United States of America as your shield and use us as cannon fodder when your agenda really has not a damn thing to do with saving Black lives. If you look at their agenda, defunding the police, that would put Black lives in danger. But it's even more than that, Laura. They have, as a part of their platform on their own website, that we want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family. And we all know that Black Americans, African Americans that are doing well, not just African Americans, Americans period, that are doing well are best when they come out of a traditional nuclear family. They seek to systematically disrupt that.
Niger, I have to say, I hadn't been aware of the LGBTQ connection at all. I've not heard that before, but I did know that it came up.
And Laura Ingraham may be kind of purposely covering that up. Kind of hard to believe she wouldn't be aware of that, but she may be kind of trying to brush that under the rug. Is kind of controlled opposition there.
Out of the organizing against Wall Street movement. Before that, the Black Panther movement, there have been a number of movements that are some loosely related, some have common goals.
Variation on a Marxist theme.
Right.
That's what the bottom line is.
So
they want to overthrow capitalism, they want to overthrow Western civilization, and they see America as the biggest, clear, and present danger to fulfilling that agenda. And they're using black people to do it.
And what I find particularly gross is a nice way of saying it. It's just gross to take the suffering of a family at the hands of a murderous police officer and then extrapolate that onto the rest of America and have people spitting in the face of police officers because they're so angry because they've been taught that this is what police officers think about them. And it's so upsetting, especially as African-American, National Guardsmen, an African-American young guy, must have been 20 years old, 21, I don't know. And I'm thinking,
Black American law enforcement officer in Oakland was murdered by one of these rioters. A retired, you've talked about David Dorn out of St. Louis, a captain was murdered by savages committing acts of destruction against the small businesses that provide the jobs in these very communities that they pretend to be supporting. Laura, it is so gross. And for all these corporations, the Cisco Systems, the Amazon, the rest of them, that give $1 or millions of dollars to the BLM agenda, they are destroying black lives. You want to talk about anti-black supremacy? That's the anti-black supremacy that.
And he makes a great point there. A big part of BLM is destroying small businesses and destroying the middle class.
That's taking place.
Well, Terry Crews, of course, yesterday tweeted that he believed that Black Lives Matter was not about reconciliation, but about supremacy, black domination, and he got huge blowback for that. But he basically came forward and said, I stand against groupthink, but the conformity is being pushed down, Niger. And that's what we're going to keep our eyes on. And the Marxist terminology is very important.
The irony, Laura, is that it's the illusion of black supremacy and the reality of a Marxist agenda that will bury all of us.
Niger, thank you so much.
So I don't know much about this man, Niger Ennis. He makes some good points. No question that BLM is using black people essentially as cannon fodder. You may have noticed, as did I, his left hand, he was making the OK, the 666 sign. I don't know if that's just coincidence or this man is controlled opposition, but, he was making good points there. I really can't argue with the points he was making. I want to play another clip. I believe this is a former Congressman, Alan West.
One of the organizers of BLM, I saw the tape over the weekend, she said, look, we're trained in the Marxist ideology. But this is what we're Marxist organizing, I guess she said. That's what they're doing.
No, you're absolutely right, and I find it very interesting that you don't have President Obama coming out and denouncing this organization, and truthfully, you don't have any Democrat leaders coming out and denouncing this organization. But I think it's also very important that we have Republicans stop being afraid, stop being concerned about being denigrated and castigated as a racist or things of this nature, and just come out and say exactly what needs to be said. This is an organization that is supporting the undermining of our constitutional republic. This organization does not deal with the rule of law. It is all about the rule of the mob, and therefore it cannot be allowed to exist when you think about the rule of law and what we stand for in this republic, the United States of America.
They seek the utter destruction of America as we know it. This is not about reforming America. This is about taking it down to the bottom. so they can then rebuild what they think is the socialist Marxist utopia, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that goes right back to what President Obama said. And when he said 5 days before 2008 election, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. So you don't have to talk about progressive socialism anymore in the United States of America. You don't have to get people to believe that this is truly who the Democrat Party is. It is a radical leftist party. These organizations that they have created, funded by people such as George Soros and others,
Let's hear that again. He names names. There was Soros.
Such as George Soros and others, they are out there stoking these fires of irrational emotionalism, and they are seeking to do exactly what you said. And I took an oath. My oath, which was to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so I see them now as an enemy to the oath that I took.
Okay, so some pretty solid words there from former Congressman Allen West. He was also a colonel in the military. And, I want to look at that funding. He brought up Soros, and we're going to get into him for a minute. And, George Soros, this is just Wikipedia, it lists some of his political organizations. Open Society, we're going to focus on them, and it also has Black Lives Matter, one of the organizations that he supports. And this is just a simple Black Lives Matter search. It's from Wikipedia. And funding of the movement we see here, the sum donated by the Ford Foundation and other donors to Black Lives Matter was reported as $100 million by the Washington Times in 2016. Another donation of $33 million to Black Lives Matter is reportedly issued by the Open Society Foundation. So we know Open Society Foundation, it is funded by George Soros. That's one of his main front groups. We see here the dollar amount, $33 million. There's that 33 number, the most prominent number in Freemasonry and Satanism. No coincidence whatsoever. And I want to play a couple clips. George Soros' name has been coming up a lot on Fox News lately.
But this is what's happening. New York City is now like a third world country. New York City will be like Chicago. It's like, the homeless in Minneapolis, 43 days in Portland. They are bringing down our civilization intentionally. And the combination of Soros-funded DAs who are not interested in prosecuting Soros-funded DAs. Combination of Soros-funded DAs who are not interested in prosecuting crime, in the so-called bail reform where we let them out as soon as the paperwork is done, along with the refusal to even enforce the law because the cops have not been trained on how to even effectuate an arrest, we will be living in an all-out barbaric society. And you wonder why gun purchases are going through the roof? No one's going to come when 911 is called. Gotcha.
Okay, so she mentions Soros particularly.
After getting millions from virtue signaling corporations and celebs, the Black Lives...
By the way, I want to point out, I'm going to speak about this later too. Take a look at a lot of these marches and protests for Black Lives Matter. You'll notice you'll never see a person above 30 years of age. It would appear every single person at these rallies appears to be in their early 20s. I mean, you will never, ever, ever see like a 50-year-old person or a 60-year-old person at these rallies. And that's because they're preying on young and naive people. Unfortunately, a lot of these young people in their early 20s, a lot of them have had no family structure, no role models in their lives to teach them. Most of them are very naive, lost, very deceived. George Soros, Henry Kissinger, they literally refer to them as useless idiots. So they're just really completely brainwashed and really have no idea what they're really protesting. It's very sad. A lot of them mean well and think they're actually sticking up for Black lives, and they have no idea this is a Marxist agenda to destroy the country, to bring in this New World Order global banking system of one world currency.
Matter movement is about to get another massive windfall, this time from liberal mega donor George Soros' foundation, Open Societies. It's injecting $220 million into...
So here we see Soros apparently is putting $220 million into Black Lives Matter and other organizations. From the New York Times, I mean, this very, very rare for the New York Times to put, any information like that out there. So there's probably got to be an angle they're trying to play with this.
The movement in order to radically change America's criminal justice system. 150 million will be doled out to so-called racial justice groups. Can't wait to see those, including those that want to end policing as we know it. That's the language he used. Joining me now is Raheem Kassam, the National Pulse editor-in-chief and co-host of the War Room Pandemic podcast. Raheem, you looked into these groups. Tell us what you found.
Yeah, look, I think one of the things we have to remember here and dispose of the idea is that George Soros is some, philanthropist who just wants to do good in the world. He's not. He's an activist, and he doesn't particularly care about minorities or migrants. He showed that in 1992 when he bankrupted minority families and migrant families like my own when he shortened the pound to enrich himself. And he's showing it now again. What he cares about is getting Democrats elected, and he's willing to throw money at whatever causes allow that to happen. And these causes that he's looking at right now are effectively tied to Democrats. They're inextricably linked. You look at who Black Votes Matter, for instance, is one of these groups on the receiving end of all this money. They are intrinsically linked with the Netroots Nation, this hard left progressive conference that goes on every year to push further and further to the political left. These are conference that goes on every year.
By the way, this Black Voters Matter, I believe Patrick Mahomes has now teamed up with LeBron James to push and promote this. So it looks like Patrick Mahomes is now totally sold out to the beast system.
To push further and further to the political left. These aren't the kind of sort of arm's-length NGOs without partisan agendas that Soros and the mainstream media would have you believe. You have to look beneath the surface. You have to look at their charitable status and what their charity rankings are. And frankly, these are just political organizations we're seeing Soros giving to. Again, they have been there from the beginning, saying for themselves, we exist to get rid of President Trump. That's what they're saying in their own words. Now Soros again arguing under the guise of philanthropy is trying to get Donald Trump unelected using these groups.
And what has he done in his own vast corporate structure as far as elevating minorities into senior positions?
Well, nothing so far as we can see. We actually went to Soros's hedge fund yesterday and asked them the question, how many ethnic minorities, how many blacks have you had, African Americans have you had at the top of your organization as managing directors in their Soros hedge fund? The answer is none, of course. We've checked it out, but they won't respond to the question. The truth is, it's only of use to him.
So you see there that George Soros is not interested in helping black people. He's not employing black people to any of the positions within his organizations.
To help out on these issues, when it helps him push his bargain basement pseudo Karl Popper philosophy, he doesn't actually care about these issues. As far as I'm concerned, Laura, he's wearing political blackface, but the left loves that. You look at Governor Northam, you look at Justin Trudeau. This is the new Democrat Party, the same as the old.
But really quickly, he made all of his money, his billions, in the free market, in the capitalist system. Coming from Eastern Europe, as he did, what's going on with him? Everyone I know his age from Eastern Europe are conservatives. They love America, and they don't want it to change. 15 seconds. What's your theory?
So, Laura Ingraham, it appears, is playing dumb there. Just like she said in the last clip that she was unaware of the LGBT component of Black Lives Matter. And now she's just stupidly asking, well, what's going on with Soros? Most people I know from Eastern Europe are conservative. I would almost guarantee you she knows exactly what's going on with George Soros, but she may be part of the same satanic group. I don't know that. But, it appears she's playing dumb there.
You look at the recent election results over there. George Soros is trying to pull the ladder up behind him. He's okay, Jack, and he doesn't want anyone else to be. It's disgusting and it's a disgrace. He was offered the best, and he now wants the worst for everyone else.
Raheem, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you.
Okay, and one more clip here on Soros.
Plosky's St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kimberly Gardner charged each with a single felony count of unlawful use of a weapon.
Something I want to point out, so this is concerning the whole deal. I'm sure you've seen it with this older couple in St. Louis. The protesters trespassed onto their property and they got their guns out. Notice what really popped out at me is the black and white striped shirt that the wife is wearing. You know, really made me think this certainly may have been a staged event. This may have been a complete setup and a staged event where this isn't anything organic, and this may have been staged. Anytime I see that black and white Freemason checkerboard shirt, I'm very skeptical.
St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kimberly Gardner charged each with a single.
And for those who don't know, this is the attorney that has filed felony weapon charges against the older couple.
Felony count of unlawful use of a weapon. My next guest has his own issues with Gardner when he was governor of Missouri. Eric Greitens joins me now. Governor, how is she still able to wield such power?
Well, Laura, it's important for all of your viewers to remember that Kim Gardner is a George Soros-funded prosecutor. He paid for over 70% of her campaign. And in her, the radical left is getting exactly what it paid for. I mean, this is a woman who let...
You know, and this Kim Gardner, to me, has some awfully creepy eyes. This looks to me like a woman that is clearly under demonic possession. You know, I don't know. She just really has that look to me.
Looters loose. When there were Black Lives Matter activists who assaulted and attacked businesses.
Kind of odd there had muted his words for a moment.
Burned. Police officers are shot. Retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn was murdered. Good kids are being murdered on the streets of St. Louis, and this is what she does. She goes after people who are defending themselves. She is the embodiment of the lawlessness of the left.
Yeah, we've covered the Soros effort to infiltrate these, these local prosecutors' races, Commonwealth Attorney in Virginia and Fairfax County and other counties. It's an incredibly disturbing, important story. And the prosecutor, again, in the case, had to say this about ethics back in June.
I was accused of letting every single person go who the St. Louis Police Department arrested for looting and rioting. We need the police to bring admissible evidence to charge. My office cannot issue any case when there is not admissible evidence, point blank. And if we do issue a case when there is not admissible evidence, that is unethical.
You know, it would also appear that she may have a masculine spirit, but that's just a feel I give that woman, Kim Gardner, I think her name is, that she just looks like someone that is being very much influenced by demonic spirits.
Charging looters and rioters is unethical, but these charges are fine? That's terrifying.
It is terrifying. And look, Laura, you're a lawyer. You clerked on the Supreme Court. You understand better than anyone the consequences of lawlessness. And right now, because of Kim Gardner, you have lawlessness on the streets of St. Louis. Kids are being murdered. The murder rate is up 30%. People are dying and lives are being lost because we have someone in Kim Gardner who is focused on attacking people who are defending themselves instead of actually enforcing the law. And this is the kind of consequence that you see when this kind of ludicrous liberal leftist logic of defunding the police and attacking the police and failing to enforce the law runs rampant. And that's what's happening in the city of St. Louis.
Governor, I want to go further, and I want to say, if Biden wins, heaven forbid, in November, she's the type of person with her ideology and her bias that's going to be appointed in the Justice Department. So if you like what she's doing in St. Louis, buckle up and get ready, because there are going to be a lot of Kim Gardners.
And that's probably a very valid point, is you're going to see people like this Kim Gardner and others. The Attorney General up in Minneapolis, his name's escaping me, but he's a Muslim man. But you're going to see these really radical people promoted to very high national offices.
And very high positions, wielding a lot of power at DOJ. That is a real disturbing thing. And I just want to put up the number, because you mentioned Soros, Governor, the number that he gave. Soros-backed super PAC's total contribution was at least $190,750. that she has no regrets about the assistance from the super PAC. So
Soros literally ponied up $200,000 for her candidacy for circuit attorney. That's a lot of cash just for a circuit attorney position.
No regrets about the assistance from the.
Notice the July 24th, the 2 + 4, the 6th there as well.
Super PAC. So that's a lot of cash for a St. Louis circuit attorney race, is it not?
Well, it's a tremendous amount of cash, and what happens is they come in and they buy circuit attorneys like Kim Gardner, who then go out and do their bidding. And anyone who is a threat to them, she'll attack the police. They'll come after outsiders. They're a real threat to America.
Governor, sorry to cut you off, but she is in a big war with the police. We're going to get into that later in the week.
So I don't trust that Eric Greitens, the former governor of Missouri, but, it appears he made a good point there on that prosecutor. So looking a little more at the funding of Black Lives Matter, this headline, these 18 corporations gave money to the radical Black Lives Matter group. 18, there's that 666 number, 6 + 6 + 6 = 18. To the point I mentioned earlier, if we look at a lot of these protesters for Black Lives Matter, you'll notice they all look very young. This photo, once again, I don't see a single person here that looks like they're 30 years old. Maybe this guy, but it looks like everyone here is under 30. In fact, looks like everyone here is in their early 20s. So, they're preying on these really young, naive, deceived, lost individuals that just really are totally barren of knowledge, that are just being played like total pawns, that have no idea what they're really doing. So let's look at a few of these companies. Number 3, Amazon. Jeff Bezos, you know about him. So Amazon is a funder of Black Lives Matter. Jeff Bezos, who already owns the Washington Post. He's got his hands in just a bit, in so many things. Gatorade, their logo is the lightning bolt representing Satan, Lucifer. Microsoft, well, what do you know? Bill Gates, he stepped down as CEO, but he's busy working on the vaccine, the mark of the beast, and they're saying they donated $250,000 to Black Lives Matter. I would imagine it's probably a lot more than that. 23andMe is a genetic testing company. That's kind of sketchy, in terms of genetic testing, biology. Let's see if there's anyone else noteworthy on here. Fitbit, that's a technological company that you could very well see being linked in with things that relate to the mark of the beast, kind of biometrics, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's a look at a few of the other companies that are funding Black Lives Matter. And I want to play this commercial from the NFL on BLM.
It's been 10 days since George Floyd was brutally murdered.
How many times do we need to ask you to listen to your players?
What will it take
for one of us to be murdered by police brutality?
What if I was George Floyd?
If I was George Floyd?
What if I was George Floyd?
Well, you're not George Floyd. You're a multi-millionaire living in a gated mansion, so it's not a very good comparison.
If I was George Floyd?
If I was George Floyd? If I was George Floyd?
I am George Floyd.
I am Breonna Taylor.
I am Ahmaud Arbery. I am Eric Garner.
I am Laquan McDonald.
I am Tamir Rice.
I am Trayvon Martin.
I am Walter Scott.
I am Michael Brown Jr.
I am Samuel Du Bois.
I am Frank Smart. I'm Philip White.
I am Jordan Baker.
We will not be silenced.
We assert our right
to peacefully protest.
It shouldn't take
Don't you just love it when millionaires that live in enormous mansions talk down to you about morality and ethics? People that are driving Ferraris and living in $10 million mansions.
This long, long minute. So, on behalf of the National Football League,
this is what we, the players,
would like to hear you state.
We, the National Football League,
condemn racism and the systematic oppression of black people.
We,
And there goes the communist fist up.
Black people.
I say he essentially saying he supports Marxism, the New World Order, global police state.
We, the National Football League,
admit wrong and silencing our players from peacefully protesting.
We, the National Football League,
Believe Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
So the NFL's totally sold out to Black Lives Matter. I've heard it said they're going to fly a Black Lives Matter flag at every stadium and play a separate national anthem, like I suppose a black national anthem at all their home games. So, these NFL players, some of them may know what they're up to. Some may be not totally naive, but, it has nothing to do with supporting black people. It's supporting Marxism and this New World Order globalist agenda. And I'm going to play a couple quicks here. This is Rudy Giuliani.
Over this weekend, it should be quite plain to every American who can see through the propaganda that Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the communists, and their allies are executing a plan they wrote about 4 or 5 years ago. Just go back and read what they wrote in the manifestos that they wrote, including Black Lives Matter. They want to destroy our government. They wrote then they want to do away with the police. They want to empty out the prisons. They want to internationalize our government. They want to do away with our system of courts. And they want to take your property away and give it to other people. This is an orchestrated effort. It is no longer a protest about Mr. Floyd. That ended a long time ago. This is an anarchist, organized anarchist, supported with a lot of money. We had outbreaks in about 30 cities over the weekend. There were well over 100 people wounded with guns and 25 Americans killed over the weekend. That didn't happen accidentally, Laura. That's part of a plan. And we better wake up to it, and we better stop being silly. People who say they're favorable to Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter wants to come and take your house away from you. They want to take your property away from you.
Yeah.
They want to let criminals out of prison. All criminals out of prison.
Groups that are aligning themselves.
They're anti-American.
I don't trust really Giuliani, but he makes a good point there. Black Lives Matter has been infiltrated by Antifa and these extremist communist anarchist groups, and they want to destroy property and they want to seize property, and they want to do this primarily in black neighborhoods that just completely destroy businesses and property in black neighborhoods. Really in all neighborhoods, but to this point has been primarily black neighborhoods.
Well, in these ideologically perilous times, it turns out that some of the most daring truth tellers are sports commentators. You wouldn't have expected that, but it's turned out to be true. After the NBA announced it plans to paint Black Lives Matter on courts when they resume this year, former NFL player Marcellus Wiley did what almost no journalist has done in the past month. He directly criticized BLM. Watch.
I don't know how many people really look into the mission statement of Black Lives Matter, but I did. And when you look into it, there's a couple things that jump out to me.
And, Marcellus Wiley makes a good point, is very few people have actually looked at the mission statement of Black Lives Matter to see what they really are all about.
Me, being a father and a husband, that's my mission in life right now. How do I reconcile that, what I just told you, with this mission statement that says, quote, "We dismantle the patriarchal practice. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. Children from single-parent homes versus two-parent homes. The children from the single-parent homes, this is in 1995, I was reading this. 5 times more likely to commit suicide. 6 times more likely to be in poverty. 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. 10 times more likely to abuse chemical substances. 14 times more likely to commit rape. 20 times more likely to end up in prison. And 32 times more likely to run away from home." I knew that. You know why I knew it? Because a lot of my friends didn't have family structures that were nuclear like mine, and they found themselves outside of their dreams and goals and aspirations.
Whoa.
So Marcellus Wiley, I don't know if he's genuine or controlled opposition, but he makes a really good point there. Which I'd also mention about Black Lives Matter attacking the nuclear family, the patriarchal system of family. And what he mentioned about people no family structure, that's really who Black Lives Matter is recruiting and appealing to. They're taking advantage of a lot of these people in their early 20s that have had no family structure, no role models to teach them in their lives.
There's a brave man there. I wonder what the reaction was internally to that. Is anyone listening in professional sports? The NFL now plans, it says, to play the song Lift Every Voice and Sing, a beautiful song, the so-called Black National Anthem before every game, along with the anthem that you're used to hearing. Nothing against the song, again, very pretty song. But does this mean we have separate anthems for separate races? Is that a good idea for the country or not? Jason Whitlock is a writer and partner at Outkick.com. He used to host with the man you just saw on Fox Sports. We're happy to have him on tonight. Jason, thanks so much for coming on. So,
thank you, Doug.
You are an expert at explaining what's actually happening in professional sports. What do you think this is about, and is it a good idea, do you think?
I think it's really about a lack of leadership and just a failure of men to stand up and stand on the principles that they say they believe in. And so when I look at what the NFL is doing, this goes against every value that the NFL has built itself on. Professional sports have built themselves on a celebration of Americana and the ideals and values that best exemplify America. They built themselves on unity and unifying the country. If the NFL starts out its season with everyone standing for Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem, and then virtually everyone on the field taking a knee when the Star Spangled Banner plays, I think it's going to be, if you remember the show Happy Days, the jump the shark moment when it's like, okay, Happy Days is over, the NFL will run off a nice fat chunk of its audience and will never be seen the same again because of the failure of leadership throughout the NFL. There's no way you can do any homework on Black Lives Matters and not see that it's a Marxist political organization. It's not about black death. It's not about black men. It is a political move. It's a communist political move. If for those people that stand on religious values, and this is where I say just the failure of men, I've seen many of these guys, they claim their Christianity and their religious beliefs. Do they understand Black Lives Matter, communist, Marxism is anti-religious? This is a historic failure of men and leadership. This is cowardice at its highest level. This is the NFL jumping the shark and saying we've quit being who we said we are. We're now something else because our money's on the line and we don't stand for the values we said we stood for.
In 1 minute, there is an NFL commissioner. Where is he?
Probably hiding under his desk with Troy Vincent, his assistant, or talking about Roger Goodell. Yeah. These guys don't know what to do. And look, I don't want to just blame Roger Goodell and Troy Vincent. This is NFL ownership. All of them. Cowards. Not standing up for what they believe in. America has made them filthy rich and some of the most powerful people on the planet, and they're unwilling to defend the values they built their business on and the country that has enriched them incredibly. Across the board, Tucker, politically, in the sports world, I'm looking at men fall out of cowardice. I'm looking at women fall out of cowardice. It's pervasive throughout this country.
That is exactly right. Jason Whitlock, congratulations on Outkick, by the way.
So Jason Whitlock makes some good points there. He says, this is a communist political agenda, painting the Black Lives Matter on the courts in Orlando for the NBA, the Black Lives Matter flags, NFL games, and presumably the other national anthem that's going to be played. And he says it's cowardice, and that's exactly right, as so many people are giving into this because of cowardice. So good point there. And I got to say this, you got to be careful, Jason Whitlock, because he's anti-Second Amendment. I've heard him say a lot of things about trying to, take people's guns away and outlaw certain types of firearms. So it's like anything. You got to take in the meat, spit out the bones with Jason Whitlock or anybody that you're listening to. So I want to touch real quick on Black liberation theology, and I mentioned the first video, Opal Tometi, this third founder, had mentioned right here, she's a student of liberation theology. Well, what is that? It's a synthesis of Christian theology and socioeconomic analysis based on far-left politics, particularly Marxism, that emphasizes social concern for the poor and political liberation for oppressed people. And like most of these Marxist scams, it really doesn't have to do with concern for the poor and liberating oppressed people. It's redistribution of wealth, giving even more wealth to the government and to the elites that are already billionaires and trillionaires. So what is black liberation anyway? Barack Obama's former pastor Jeremiah Wright catapulted black liberation theology onto a national stage when America discovered Trinity United Church of Christ. And I'm sure many have already heard the stories and seen with Barack Obama and his good friend, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. And, you know, you really shouldn't call a man reverend. Reverend is like the word reverence, and it belongs to God. It's really not appropriate to call any religious leader reverend. So I want to play this clip now about kind of some of the history behind Black Lives Matter.
Well, despite its immense political power, and it does have immense power, the group Black Lives Matter isn't really much of a group. It's a relatively small, flimsy organization. In fact, it doesn't really have a legal existence of its own. Officially, the primary Black Lives Matter group is simply a project of another nonprofit called Thousand Currents. Now, why is this interesting? Well, it's interesting because the current vice chair of Thousand Currents is a woman called Susan Rosenberg. And she's a convicted terrorist who spent 16 years in federal prison before she was given a pardon by Bill Clinton on the very last day in office. Bernie Kerik remembers this well. He's the former police commissioner of New York City, but before that, he worked in New Jersey, and he personally escorted Susan Rosenberg from the federal courthouse in Newark in 1985. He knows the story well, and we're happy to have him on tonight. Mr. Kerik, thank you for coming on. That picture is remarkable. So Susan Rosenberg,
I had hair then, Tucker. I had hair.
And an AR-15. So who is Susan Rosenberg? Why is it significant that she now, in effect, works for Black Lives Matter?
Well, for me, on a personal note, it's important for your viewers to know who she is, because Black Lives Matter, as I've said, dating back to 2015, it's a revolutionary Marxist group. That's what it is. It's a group that wants to overthrow this government, the country. It's a group that its founders, its three founders, were inspired by a woman named Joanne Chesimard, who goes by an African name, Assata Shakur, who lives in exile in Cuba after she assassinated a New Jersey state trooper. She was involved in a number of bombings and executions of New York City cops, cops in San Francisco, and cops in New Jersey. That's who they are. That's what they're about. And when I tried to explain that to people over the last 2 or 3 years, they didn't get it. Now, in the last few weeks, we learned Susan Rosenberg is one of their fundraising gurus, let's say. Well, Susan Rosenberg, in 1985, when you look at that photo, she was convicted of possessing hundreds of pounds of explosives. She was involved in the Brinks Nyack robbery, where 2 cops were killed and a security guard was killed. She was involved, her and her organization, the May 19th Communist Organization, they were involved in a number of police assassinations, bombings, the U.S. Capitol bombing, the Naval War College bombing, and a number of others in the United States. She was a radical revolutionary, and she was let out of prison. She was commuted on the last day of President Clinton's term in office. After 16 years in prison, she was given 58 years in prison. And now she's out. Who does she work for? Black Lives Matter. I think you know, we're missing something here. I think DOJ should be looking at Black Lives Matter as a terrorist group, as a terrorist organization, and I think I find it astounding that all these U.S. firms, some 200,
that you've chronicled on your show. They're just pounding money into a group that's all about the overthrow of this government.
You know, so it's interesting. You have this Bernie Kerik, I think he's chief of police in New York, saying Black Lives Matter really should be a terrorist group. And obviously, we're having hundreds of corporations just pouring millions, billions of dollars into this organization, this Marxist group that he's correct is trying to overthrow the government of this country and trying to destroy businesses, families, and the American way of life.
And if you can't see it on its face by what they do normally on a daily basis, then you need to start looking at their associates, their inspirers, and the people around them, because this stuff has been going on since 1960s, 70s, and the early 80s, when these people, these revolutionaries, Marxist revolutionaries, wanted to overthrow this country.
It's just amazing that all the rich ladies in Aspen and Greenwich think BLM is about ending racism, which obviously all of us are for, when in fact it's a revolutionary group. Maybe the U.S. government could take decisive action, and by doing that, make it really clear that this is a terror organization.
You know what, Tucker? Black Lives Matter was truly, working for Black lives. They'd be marching tonight in Chicago, or Baltimore, or Cleveland, and I can give you 20 other cities.
No, I know, and it is, and it's having the opposite effect, needless to say.
You know, and exactly right. Black Lives Matter does not care about any of the violence against Black Americans being perpetuated in so many American cities. And, I want to mention, I know I'm playing several clips from Fox News, and it's kind of the thing, you want to take in the meat, spit out the bones. In at least two other videos, I've kind of shown the disinformation and some of the lies you see on Fox News. You got to be careful. You're going to encounter a lot of lies and deception on Fox News. Occasionally you'll see some relevant, good information. And in this case, a few of these interviews seem to tie in with what I'm speaking about on this. So getting a little more into this Thousand Currents, this organization that this Susan Rosenberg is involved with. In 2016, Black Lives Matter Global Network approached Thousand Currents to create a fiscal sponsorship agreement. Thousand Currents, a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization, provides the legal and administrative framework to enable BLM to fulfill its mission. Fiscal sponsorship is a common structure utilized by nonprofit organizations. Oftentimes, nonprofit initiatives seek fiscal sponsorship to be able to have this fiscal sponsor handle administrative operations while the organization focuses on its programs and builds up its own organizational infrastructure. In this capacity, we provide administrative and back office support, including finance, accounting, grants management, insurance, human resources, legal, and compliance. Donations to BLM are received as restricted donations to support the activities of BLM. Very sketchy. So Thousand Currents is the fiscal sponsor partnering with Black Lives Matter, and it is a 501c3. The 501c3, the tax-exempt status you see with a lot of churches, and run from those churches as fast as you can the other direction because the government mandates what they can preach. But very sketchy what's going on financially with Black Lives Matter. So they're under the umbrella of Thousand Currents, who's a 501c3 tax-exempt status. So you kind of get the idea. Very sketchy what's going on with the financial funding of Black Lives Matter. This woman, Susan Rosenberg, that is mentioned in that interview, is a convicted domestic terrorist, radical left activist whose youth was spent protesting the Vietnam War and racism. A member of the Weather Underground, we're going to talk more about them, and other radical organizations which use violence as a tool for political change. Rosenberg was sentenced to 58 years in federal prison after being arrested for possession of explosives and weapons during the planning of a number of bombing operations. She was a suspect in a 1981 armored car robbery which left one guard and two officers dead. She was released in 2001 when then President Bill Clinton commuted her sentence. How about that? Okay, Rosenberg continued her radical activism with the publication of her 2011 book, An American Radical, and is the vice chair of the fiscal sponsor group, Thousand Currents. So there you go, the group that funds BLM. From 2016 to 20,000 Currents became one of America's most influential racial and social change organizations because it is Black Lives Matter Global Network's fiscal sponsor. Thousand Currents handles Black Lives Matter's administrative and back-end work so the racial group can focus on its activism, protests, and riots. As of June 24, 2020, 2 plus 4, there's a 6. Thousand Currents had deleted from its website the board of directors information listing Rosenberg's biography, so they're trying to hide her background. And there we see the Brinks robbery in 1981, and here's her Wikipedia on Susan Rosenberg. She was active in the far-left revolutionary terrorist group May 19th Communist Organization, which according to a FBI report openly advocated the overthrow of the U.S. government through armed struggle and the use of violence. M19CO provided support for an offshoot of the Black Liberation Army, including in armored truck robberies, and later engaged in bombings of government buildings. And there we see mention of the 1981's Brinks robbery that she was a suspect in that resulted in the deaths of 2 police and a guard, although she was never charged in that case. Okay, so she was a member of the Weather Underground. We see here, Weather Underground. Do you remember them? You know, you used to hear a lot about them going back about 10 years ago. I remember when Glenn Beck was on TV, he talked a lot about the Weathered Underground. And it is a radical left militant organization active in the 60s and 70s, founded on the Ann Arbor campus of the University of Michigan. It was originally called the Weatherman. The organization's expressed political goal was to create a revolutionary party to overthrow what is viewed as American imperialism. So it calls for a white fighting force to be allied with the Black Liberation Movement and other radical movements to achieve the destruction of U.S. imperialism and form a classless communist world. The FBI classified the NWO as a domestic terrorist group with revolutionary positions characterized by black power in opposition to the Vietnam War. The NWO took part in domestic attacks such as the jailbreak of Timothy Leary. Okay, in the 1970s, the NWO conducting a bombing campaign targeting government buildings and several banks. So here is the logo for the Weather Underground. You'll notice you've got a rainbow. Well, where does that come from? I believe it's both the book of Genesis and the book of Revelation. It talks about a rainbow being around God's throne, symbolizing his covenant with the people of the earth to never flood the earth again after the great flood, Noah's flood. We see also a lightning bolt. Well, where do we know that from? Luke 10:18, Jesus Christ speaking, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Anytime you see that lightning, think of it, it represents Satan. So their founders, Bill Ayers and his wife, Bernadine Dorn. Bill Ayers is an American elementary education theorist. He was a leader of the Weather Underground. He is known for his 1960s radical activism and his later work in educational reform, curriculum, and instruction. Ayers is a retired professor in the College of Education at the University of Illinois at Chicago, formerly holding the titles of Distinguished Professor of Education and Senior University Scholar. During the 2008 U.S. presidential campaign, a controversy arose over his contacts with then-candidate Barack Obama. He is married to lawyer and clinical law professor Bernadine Dorn, so him and his wife are both professors. You may remember that there was a lot of talk about the connections with Bill Ayers and Barack Obama, that they were close friends. And so, it's interesting. You've got a lot of people like Bill Ayers, these far radical leftist communists, even violent, running universities. A lot of them are professors at universities. And if you're in college or have a kid in college, it's likely they've got people like Bill Ayers, these radical communists, teaching them. Okay, so a couple of quick videos to finish up on here.
But when they don't know,
I want to show some of the hypocrisy at play here.
Microphones are turned on. We occasionally hear truth from prominent liberals in Congress, such as this revealing press conference about the George Floyd protests from New York Congressman Eliot Engel.
There's just too many folks here.
So there you see Eliot Engel saying if he didn't have a problem, he didn't care. He's just there to put on a good face and try and get some votes. And now I want to show, Black Lives Matter is very anti-Christian, anti-religion, and this could be a fake video, but presumably it's real, of them harassing churches. So, make what you will of that video, but it's very clear Black Lives Matter. It is a anti-Christian Marxist group. Now, I want to play a couple of quick clips here of what Leo Terrell says about Black BLM.
Sean, let me tell you right now, I'm so sick of all the shooting and the killing and lawlessness, and I gotta call out Black Lives. They are a joke. If they really care about the Black lives, what about Chicago? I submit to you that
12 kids.
I submit to you that Black Lives is nothing more than a profiteer. If it does not involve a police officer, they don't care about those Black lives. That 3-year-old girl, Reverend Al won't get on his private jet and speak at that girl's funeral. And these corporations, stop giving money to Black lives. They don't care about the lives that are being lost right now. It is a sham organization. Nothing more, nothing less. And they are a funnel group for the extremists on the left.
You're talking about the group. You're not talking about protest.
And he's exactly right. It's a sham. They don't care about Black lives. And it's a funnel group for far-left communists that want to set up this New World Order global police state.
Well, thank you. Just give me 45 seconds. I want to thank Terry Crews. Black Lives was exposed last night by Don Lemon. Why? Because, you know what? Don Lemon admitted they don't care about crime at all in the cities of Chicago or any of these big cities. They don't care about a police officer being shot and killed. Don Lemon said on TV that Black Lives only cares if a police officer is involved in a shooting. So I want every Democrat to hear that. Watch the video. Black Lives is only concerned about a few individuals, and they don't care about the Black lives like that 7-year-old girl in Chicago or the 6-year-old in New York. More importantly, Black Lives is instrumental, and ultimate goal is to tear down the American institution. Don Lemon basically said Black Lives' purpose is limited, and that is very, very important. One last point, Sean. Law and order, you got to go vote Republican, vote Trump. If you want safe streets, you got to vote Republican, Donald Trump. Because Don Lemon made it very clear that Black Lives Matter has hijacked the Democratic Party. And if you believe in law and order, if you're a Democrat, vote Republican.
Okay, so he's kind of getting into the left-right, Trump-Biden game there. But, he's correct just touching on what we mentioned about Terry Crews. Black Lives Matter does not care about black people or the violence against them.
Black Lives Matter is a fraud. Black Lives Matter is a fraud and a shakedown, period.
Yes, it is, and it is a shakedown. And, that Leo Terrell, I'm not sure what, he used to be really far left liberal, And literally all of a sudden, the last couple months now, he's a Trump supporter and conservative. And I don't know if he's an actor just completely going by a script, where he was far left, now he's conservative and coming around, or I don't know if it's possible he's realized that he's been used as a total pawn, and has kind of come to his senses. You tend to think that the vast majority of these people have to be, if not all of them, actors, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe a few of these are people that have been used, and they've woken up to the fact that they're pawns. But anyhow, so this is an interview with a man that I think he's the head of the New York chapter of Black Lives Matter.
I watched you.
And isn't it funny? He's wearing this hat, "Sold Not for Sale," yet he is promoting and leading a satanic organization.
Talking and on a bunch of different interviews today, and you said, burn it down. You said, burn it down. It's time. So that makes me think that you want to burn it down.
I said, if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it. All right, and I could be speaking figuratively. I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation.
So he's saying burn it down and saying he could be speaking literally. So that is a literal threat of violence, speaking with impunity, not concerned at all about breaking the law. So that shows you the brazenness of confidence of Black Lives Matter. They believe they can break the law and do whatever they want, and they will not be held accountable, because Black Lives Matter is a Trojan horse for this NWO system. And this ought to give you a good laugh. This commercial is just a total joke.
You're not born a racist. You're not. You're taught. The only way to change it is by changing how young people view it. People are finally listening and taking the time to understand. You have to learn about Black history and how we can get to racial equality. This has to be taught. That's my 30 seconds, but the time for change is change.
So we've got
That's my 30 seconds.
Ian Eagle, the NFL announcer. What an unbelievable tool. What a toolbox sellout. Trying to pitch that Black Lives Matter is somehow about ending racism and helping black people, and just no words for how pathetic this man is. He'll just do anything to get a check, anything to get that paycheck. And he better wake up. I knew you're going to the lake of fire if you don't repent and wake up, you sellout.
And I think that Black Lives Matter, that a lot of...
And I just want to close with, this is the last video I'm going to show.
Black Lives Matter, that a lot of organizations, a lot of companies, they are endorsing that movement for protection, because they feel that they don't, their windows will be broken out, their buildings will be burnt down, the police will not be there to protect anyone. And so people are going along with them. And again, it will not end well, because the more they get, the more they want. And no one is pushing back. And that is very distressing that people are not pushing back. And I see that connected with all of the hysteria the Democrats are pushing with the coronavirus and making us all wear a mask. It's all about destroying our way of life.
So she talks about the whole farce and the mask deal of forcing us to wear the masks
America,
to destroy our way of life.
And people need to wake up. Wake up, Carol.
Now, let me say, she's for Black Voices for Trump. I don't trust Donald Trump. He may very well be part of this NWO plan and a complete actor, but just, I like what she says here. Just end on this note.
In America, and people need to wake up. Wake up, Carol. We're gonna.
Amen. She says it twice for emphasis. Wake up. People need to wake up. Wake up. People need to wake up and see what is really going on, because we are being greatly deceived. This is the greatest deception in the history of the world, this virus that's going on. So I know I've gone a long time here. I just want to hit on a few quick scriptures. James 4:4, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. So all these movements like Black Lives Matter that are really popular, that the media supports, that ought to give you a clue. If you're involved in these popular movements, you're a friend of the world, and a friend of the world is an enemy of God. You're an enemy of God if you're supporting Black Lives Matter and these popular mainstream media movements. You need to really wise up and think for yourself and pray, read the Bible, get the truth. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 14 or 15, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed in an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So Satan makes himself look good and like a good thing, and so do his servants. Black Lives Matter on the surface, it looks like a good thing. That's what they're selling, that the ignorant people buy, that they're just there to stop racism and help black people. So on the surface, it looks like a good thing. Satan appears as an angel of light, but deep down it's not. It's very evil and corrupt and wicked. We've got to understand this about the ministers of Satan. They may appear very good and helpful on the outside. They don't show you who they really are. You've got to have the spiritual discernment to see it. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. That's the problem with so many people and so many young people. They get caught up in BLM and all these movements. They don't have knowledge. They're coming from a place of ignorance and naivety, and it is destroying them, and they need to wake up fast. Jeremiah 5:21, hear now this, O foolish people, without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not. And that's what we see today. So many people, they have eyes, but they don't see the truth. They have ears, they don't hear the truth. They're completely blinded by the deceptions of the devil. Ephesians 5:11, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. And we are to have no fellowship with these evil organizations and evil works, but we are to expose them. That's why I do these videos. And so, in summary, Black Lives Matter, these founders, obviously you're very naive if you think that these three women are the people that really founded and who are behind Black Lives Matter. These were simply figureheads that were chosen because they fitted the role. And I don't know, are these women boule, Freemasons? Are they witches? Are they involved in witchcraft and Satanism? It's certainly possible. Are they just naive and being used? Could be, but this much, they're wicked. They're pushing this agenda, so they're knowingly pushing a wicked agenda. And of course, we know, we looked at Susan Rosenberg as someone who's been involved with this and funding it. George Soros, Jeff Bezos, and Amazon, Microsoft. That's who really is behind Black Lives Matter. People like George Soros. Who's really behind it are these billionaire globalist wealthy elites, these who are almost all primarily white. That's who really is behind Black Lives Matter. Men like George Soros. These women are just the figureheads that look the part, that they want to use as their pawns. So I hope this video helped you, and please pass on this video and others to friends and family if you believe it'll help them. So God bless everyone, and I'll see you next time.